this video, I'm going to teach you 10 songs that taught me how to play the harmonica, ordered from easiest to hardest. We're doing them all on a C harmonica, and if you'd like the written tabs and jam tracks, just follow the link below the video. I first learned the harmonica when I was 16 years old, which was a long time ago. My buddy Justin encouraged me to learn. We were both guitar players and blues fanatics, so I was game to give it a go. I got my first harmonica, I was excited and then surprised when he said, "So the best thing to do first is to learn children's songs." Why? Because it's good to just start learning where the notes are on the harmonica. Get your ear and your brain connected with them. Plus, you can work on your ability to play single notes, which is really hard at the beginning. Are the first 3 songs the sexiest songs in the world? No. But don't worry, by the time we get to the 4th song and beyond, we are gonna learn sexy songs that'll make you sound cool, so stick with me. 16-year-old Luke couldn't play single notes at first, so Mary Had a Little Lamb sounded like this. After I had been playing for several weeks, it started to sound more like this. Could you hear the difference? I had learned how to play clean single notes by bringing the corners of my mouth together and allowing my lips to stay relaxed. All great harp players know how to play nice, clean single notes. And I have a whole video on the subject. There's a link in the info section below. Once I was playing clean single notes, I faced a couple of new obstacles in the next song. First challenge here were these merrily, 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 merrily. Breathing 3 times each on holes 7, 6, 5, and 4 without running out of breath. The key is to use articulations. And the ones that I like best in this context are ta-ta-ta or da-da-da. They sound nearly identical but feel slightly different. And whenever you're evaluating any technique like this that you're working on, remember this principle. If it sounds good, and it feels good, it is good. The second challenge became even more obvious in this next song, which is also the last nursery rhyme in this video before we get to the good stuff. So what was the challenge here? Okay, here's hole 4. Now, where is hole 6? Let's see. Oh, right here. The challenge is skipping a hole, and the mistake is to take your mouth off the harmonica, look at where hole 6 is, and then try and put your mouth back on the harmonica. The boss way is to slide and listen for the right note. Oops, I went too far. There it is. That will teach you the distance, and then eventually you won't have to slide anymore. But also, because the harmonica is harmonized, you might find that the slide actually sounds cool and decide to keep it as part of your personal expression. And using sliding on this next tune helped 16-year-old Luke get to flex a faster tempo. Since the first 5 notes here are all blows, I could get this going pretty fast, doing the first 3 notes all on one breath, and then just saying ta-ta for the second 2 blow 6s. I recently realized that a more accurate beginning to the melody would have a draw 4 in it, like this. Now that I've been playing harmonica for a few decades, I can probably play it fast that way too. But I don't think I could have played it that fast that way back in the day. I've got it tabbed out for you both ways in the link below, so you can jam along with the jam track whichever way you prefer. You may have noticed that I did something on both of these last 2 songs, on the draw 4, 5, and especially on the 6s, to inject some soulful feeling into it. Throughout this video, and also in the written tabs linked below, I've colored the tabs blue on the notes that I like to bend into. You don't have to bend these notes in order for them to sound right, but you might experiment with using articulations like dwa, hya, or I find that I'm using ui on these folk tunes to inject a little bit of soulfulness into the draw notes. Speaking of a crying soulful sound, at this point in my journey, I was still pining to play something bluesy. I was so happy when my friend taught me this. This was the very first train imitation that I learned. Now, there are lots of different variations on the train. I teach one of the most popular ones in my beginner lesson #1 video, and I'll be teaching more versions in future videos. By the way, the version that I just played in this video, I also teach step by step in my beginner to boss course, which, if you want to turbocharge your growth on the harmonica, you might be interested in checking out, and perhaps joining thousands of folks who thought they were musically hopeless, but are now jamming some serious harmonica at harmonica.com. But at any rate, here are the important takeaways from this train. Now, my mama taught me that trains say chugga chugga, chugga chugga. So I'm not sure exactly where takadahu comes from, but I am sure that it's a lot of fun. And takada ends up being a useful articulation anytime you want to play 3 fast notes, whether it be chords or single notes. The other takeaway is, how the heck do you play holes 1 and 4 but not holes 2 and 3? These are what are known as split 4s, where we block holes 2 and 3 with our tongue, and we just play holes 1 and hole 4 out of either side of our mouth at the same time. So here's playing holes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then putting my tongue on holes 2 and 3. Holes 1 and 4 is the best place to learn splits, and then later on you can move the technique across the harmonica, and this really increases blues horsepower, this kind of thing. But if learning this technique feels overwhelming to you right now, then you can just breathe in and out on the same chords that you say takadahu on, like this. This version of the train is pretty easy, and that's why I was even more excited to learn my first legit single note blues lick. I was a big fan of the Muddy Waters record Hard Again, produced by Johnny Winter as the first release on his Blue Sky record label in 1977. So when I learned the James Cotton lick from Cross-Eyed Cat, I was finally starting to feel like I could play me some blues harmonica. My favorite part about this lick is the slide up to the hole 5. As I mentioned before, sliding is a great way to add personal expression to your playing. Here's the lick without the slide. And now with the slide. I rest my case, Your Honor. Cross-Eyed Cat is a great beginner blues riff because it sounds really cool if you can bend into the draw 3, but even if you can't bend into the draw 3, it still sounds great. And it's super easy to memorize. You just have to remember 3 things. Draw blow on hole 5, draw and blow on hole 4, and then 2 draws in a row from the hole 3 to the hole 4. You can memorize that. You can do it! On the other hand, the next song was hard to memorize. It took me months to figure out both how to play it and how to remember it. Here are the hacks I discovered to memorize this piece. Notice that the second line repeats the first line exactly, only the last 3 notes are different. The first ends with a 5 and 2 draw 4s, and the second line ends with a draw 4 and 2 blow 4. Hey, that's like a question and an answer. Like a call and a response. Whoa, Beethoven was like a blues man, actually.
Game recognized game.
Then notice that the second line and the fourth line are identical. The fourth line just enters a little bit earlier. So once you have the first 2 lines, you're 75% of the way there. Now we just have to tackle the third line. And the third line uses repetition too. We can break it into 3 parts. This is a great technique to use when you're making up your own solos, by the way. It's what fancy music theorists refer to as motivic development. First, state the motif, which just means play a musical idea. Play a lick. Second, develop the motif, which just means play the lick again, but make a small change to it. In this case, changing the draw 4 to a blow and a draw on hole 5. Third, rinse and repeat. In this case, we're playing the second lick exactly the same, and then just adding 4 more notes. Using repetition like this can help you turn a couple cool licks into a nice long blues solo. And speaking of a nice long blues, I can literally still remember exactly where I was the summer my buddy taught me this next song. It was such a revelation for me to be able to play a nice long blues. Gotta Move is an old African-American spiritual that was popularized by Mississippi Fred McDowell back in the 1940s, and then further popularized by the Rolling Stones in 1971 on their Sticky Fingers album. If the single notes and bends in this version are over your head right now, I made a super simple version of this song that still sounds really legit. It's the last song in my 5 Stupidly Simple Riffs video. In addition to the bends that I've indicated in blue here, you may have also noticed that I'm using some tremolo and some vibrato. Both of these are like wavering kind of effects. Like the end of the third line, the blow 4 doesn't bend, but we can put some tremolo on it using the coughing effect. Or at the end of the fourth line, the draw 2 does bend, so we can put some vibrato on it. Now, I wasn't doing this when I was 16 years old, but I wish someone had shown it to me back then, so here we go. It's that same coughing technique, but on a draw. Luke, you say, that's so much harder than it is on an exhale. To which I say, correct. It's awkward as hell. I wish it wasn't, but it is. There you have it. Now, while we're doing that, we're gonna slowly bring our tongue up into the cuz zone where we would put it when we bend. And you just have to experiment with this. I'm gonna take it too far so you can see how you play with this. Moving my tongue further into the k zone. You just gotta play with it. So we're moving our mouths into the position it is when we do our draw two bend. And if you need help with your draw two whole step bends, this next song will give it to you. Lowrider from the band War with the iconic hook played by Lee Oscar on harmonica. I've got this at song number 9 because of those draw two whole step bends. And when you're working on your draw two whole step bend, the Bend It Better tool can be useful for getting visual feedback for how close you are to getting the full whole step bend. So here I'm playing G released, then I'm starting to get the pitch down to the half step, and then finally to the whole step bend. And once you can get that bend, then we want to pay very close attention to our mouth position, stop the airflow, and then start the airflow again without changing our mouth position. And because the back of our tongue is up in the k zone, the syllable k is a very natural articulation for repeating this bent note multiple times, as we do for 2 sets of 5 in this song. And then a bend and a release. And you'll notice this last note gets louder over time. The musical term for that is crescendo, and it's a great way to add excitement to a held note. From the album The Real Folk Blues, the song is Peach Tree. This is great because it's a nice long blues like You Gotta Move, but played by one of blues harmonica's great legends, Mr. Rice Miller, aka Sonny Boy Williamson II. On the last line, when I'm bending up into the draw 4 at the beginning and the draw 2 at the end, I feel like I'm using the syllable qua. I have this as one of the hardest songs in the video because we really need to be able to play the bent draw 4 in time. Another great way to practice your bends in time is simply to practice the blues scale, which I cover in this video. Go test yourself!